Do I have any nominations for chair? Councillor Pierce?
Councillor Bell?
Councillor Bell, do you accept?
I do.
Are there any other nominations? Councillor Chambers?
Procedure bylaw is very clear that you can only be chairman 1 year and then it rotates. So Councillor Bell would be ineligible according to our procedural bylaw. I can read it if you want. It says, Rule 94, each standing committee shall recommend a chair and a vice chair for approval by council. The chair and vice chair positions for the standing committees will rotate each year. So that would mean that the current chair and the current vice chair cannot be, the current chair can't be the current chair and the vice chair can't be the vice chair. But the vice chair can be the chair, so I will nominate David Miller.
Okay. Councillor Miller, do you accept?
I do.
Okay. Are there any other nominations?
I just have a comment, if I might. It's a shame because I think the chair and vice chair for 2020 only had 2 meetings before we went into a different format. But Adam, I take it you concur with Councillor Chambers' interpretation of the bylaw.
Yeah, and I'm seeing no sort of dissent from the committee. I concur with that, yes. So are there any nominations, any other further nominations? Councillor Chambers?
Just to be clear, it's not my opinion that that's the way it is. The procedural bylaw clearly states the chair and vice chair positions for the standing committees will rotate each year. So that's the procedural bylaw. It's not my interpretation. That's what the bylaw says.
Councillor Pierce?
Move to close.
Is there a seconder for that nomination or that motion? Councillor Bell? All those in favor? Councillor Miller will be the chair. Do I have nominations for vice chair? Councillor Laferriere?
Yeah, I'd like to nominate Councillor Bell.
Councillor Bell, do you accept?
I do.
Are there any other nominations? Is there a mover to close nominations? Mayor Bailey, seconded by Councillor Gatward. All those in favor? Councillor Miller, you may assume the chair.
All right, thank you. Is there anything special I need to do for my end, given that I've never chaired from my house before?
I can forward you some notes that have all the movers and seconders.
Okay, well, you know what, we'll skip that. I don't need that particularly. I mean, we never used to have that, so I think we'll be fine without it.
Nothing dissimilar then, yes.
Yeah, okay, all right.
Point of order.
Yes.
Through you, Mr. Chair. I'm wondering, because you're now the chair, if you were moving or seconding anything, do you have to have somebody else do those?
Yeah, that's correct. That's why. Yeah. So okay. We're good on that one. Thank you. Okay, so that'll take us to item 3, then approval of the agenda. I need a mover for that. Moved by Councillor Howes, the seconder. Okay, we'll go with Councillor Bryan. All in favor? Opposed, if any? I don't see any. Okay, that's approved. I should have asked, is there anybody that wants to add anything to the agenda? Okay, seeing none, we'll move on. Declaration of pecuniary interest, obviously, I'm going to ask you to do it at the appropriate time. And as far as delegations, petitions, presentations, we don't have any outside the normal planning application presentations. Bring us up to item 6, adoption of the minutes from the previous meetings. Can I get a motion, please, to get that on the floor? Now, Councillor Pierce is moving it and Councillor Gatward is seconding it. Are there any errors, omissions, additions, anybody, or discussion on any of those items in the minutes? Okay, see none, move to approve the agenda or approve the minutes. Opposed? See none. We'll go on to public hearings under the Planning Act to receive information from the public. And of course, this is one I'm sure we're all quite familiar with at this time, Shelby Stone, address 12 Park Lane. And again, just to be clear to anybody that is listening or watching, this application, there is no decision being made tonight. This is just for information only. At some point, staff will take the information that's presented and combine it with the information they have. And at some point, we may see an application come forward at a later date, at a later planning meeting for a decision. So I'll turn it over to our planner. And Matt, who would that be for tonight that could present to us on this one?
Thanks very much. The planner presenting application ZBA 4120 KD will be Senior Planner Kayla DeLay.
Okay, so Kayla, we'll turn it over to you. And now you'll be doing screen sharing as well, Kayla?
No, I'll just be presenting a summary of my information.
Okay, you take it away, and then when you're done, let me know.
Okay. Thank you. So a planning application has been received for a zoning bylaw amendment application prepared by Shelby Stone, the owner and operator of Sugar and Spice Bakery, for the subject lands located at 12 Park Hill Lane in Paris. It should be noted that the application was brought forward as a result of a bylaw complaint. It is recommended at this time that the item be received for information purposes only. The subject lands front onto the north side of Park Hill Lane. The lands contain an existing single detached dwelling and are designated as urban residential. The subject lands are zoned R1-16, and the surrounding land uses are primarily residential. The application received proposes to amend the zoning on the subject lands to permit takeout accessory to the home occupation of an existing caterer's establishment known as Sugar and Spice Bakery.
Just wait a minute. When she's done, I'll speak and see if they hear me.
Within the zoning bylaw, there is a definition of home occupation, which states that a catering establishment is a permitted home occupation. Catering establishment is defined in our zoning bylaw, but it specifically states that no takeout is permitted, and therefore that is what makes the zoning amendment application necessary. It should be noted that since the application was submitted, it has been brought to our attention that within the subdivision agreement, additional restrictive covenants are registered on title. And these covenants speak to prohibiting a commercial business. Planning staff and legal staff are investigating this subdivision agreement covenant, and more research and more analysis is necessary. Planning staff will bring forth more details and findings when the application is brought forward to council at a future meeting with the recommendation report. I should note that significant feedback from the community has been provided on this application, with over 100 emails received in support, and approximately 3 letters of opposition have been noted as well. In terms of the next steps, the application, it has been circulated to applicable staff and commenting agencies. As noted, there has been the unusual restricted covenant brought to our attention since the application was deemed complete. So we will be working with legal staff to bring further information forward at the time of decision. Once we receive all our comments, further public notice will be given, and staff will present a recommendation report. Thank you, and I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Okay, thank you, Kayla. So what we're going to do now, we'll turn it over to the committee for any questions of clarification from the planner. And Councillor Wheat, I see you have your hand up first, so go ahead.
I just want to know if you can hear me.
Yes.
That's all I need to know. Very good. Thank you.
Okay.
It's my technical director just come back and fix me up.
Okay, just so you know, John, we did hear you kind of making some noise when the planner was presenting, so just be aware of that.
I was just talking to my director.
Okay. Richie.
She's 7 years old, smarter than me.
Okay, any other questions? Councillor House, we'll start with you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. A question through you to Kayla. And I thought maybe we were going to do this after the presentations, but this is okay to do it now. This is a learning exercise for all of us. I think we're all going to learn a lot more about this particular part of planning than we ever knew before. People live here and move here because they want a small town charm. I hear this from residents just about every day. My observation growing up in this small town is that just about every street has a piano teacher or someone cutting hair or a guy sharpening skates. We seem to value these small entrepreneurs. My question to you is twofold, and I understand that the answers may not be available tonight. First is, if the applicant had people coming to the house for piano lessons, would they still have to go through this application for a zoning amendment? And secondly, does this residential subdivision with the covenants that you touched on, does it have a different set of rules than any other residential area of the county? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor House.
Okay, so through the chair, in terms of the first question regarding piano lessons and, would that application be necessary? They would still need to meet the provisions of the home occupation in our zoning bylaw. And so provided it was an appropriate size and scale, piano lessons may be a permitted home occupation, but we would need to review each home occupation on a case-by-case basis to ensure that they meet the several provisions that our bylaw outlines, such as parking requirements, lighting, signage, nuisance, those sorts of things. So I don't have a clear answer, but it's likely that there's potential piano could meet home occupation. And then secondly, do these covenants apply to other subdivisions? Again, that is something that planning staff will be looking into, and we will bring forward more information at recommendation stage.
Thank you.
Any other questions from the committee? Okay, seeing none. Oh, okay, Councillor Farrer. Yeah,
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you to Kayla. Kayla, you talked about size and scale. I imagine there must be something around type as well. When I think of retail, I think of a retail space. I think of, cash exchanging hands. I think of a cash register, display, lighting, signage, etc. And I know that isn't here in this case. Essentially, this is pickup. Now, this makes me wonder. I know I have a small daughter. We start selling Girl Guide cookies, and every year, January 15th, we have 120 people want to come pick them up from our porch. Am I at risk of getting, or anybody else at risk of getting, bylaw called on us? Are we at risk of this sort of thing? Also, you talked about size and scale. How are we going to, in this case, and generally speaking, what are the limits around size and scale? Because again, if I'm running a psychotherapy practice through my home where I might be actually having a retail space where I might sell books and self-help tapes and things like that, this probably wouldn't occur, yet this case is simply curbside pickup. We have these mom and dad groups all over town where the porch is like community commerce at its greatest. And if we are going to basically be having some provisions against porch pickup during a pandemic and even after, I have some serious concerns about precedent the other way as well. So maybe you can speak to size and scale, type, and my understanding is also these special covenants are only 40 years unless it states something else. So if you can touch on any of that, that'd be great. And if not, then if some of that can be addressed when it comes back to us for decision in a cycle or two, that'd be great.
Yes, thank you. So through the chair to council, in regards to the size and scale, I can note that the application that has been submitted is only asking for relief for the takeout portion. And the size and scale that is permitted as of right for home occupations is 45 square meters. So within our zoning bylaw, there is gross floor area restrictions for the home occupation size. And it also states that no more than 25% of the gross floor area of the dwelling unit may be devoted for the home occupation.
So a follow-up if I could, Mr. Chair?
Go ahead, Mark.
Because there's no retail space here, I imagine, and because the complaints that triggered this are about traffic, do we have any provisions around size and scale of traffic, incoming traffic? Because my understanding is this business also does, booked pickups, much like, the moms and dads in the community do with their porch pickup. It's not just come anytime. So, if the issue is about a number of customers at a certain time, could this possibly, and maybe this isn't a question for planning, but could this possibly be addressed through limitations on that, like 5 customers in an hour at most? Or because this is about cars and traffic essentially is my understanding, or at least the complaints are. So can we maybe speak to that portion of the size, scale, and scope?
Through the chair.
I don't know, is that something, is that something you can answer, or did you want to leave that?
Through the
Go
chair
ahead,
to
Katie.
council, I can note that there are retail sale provisions under home occupation, which speak to approximately 10% of the floor area of that home occupation. So there are provisions, but we can follow up with some more details related to that at our recommendation stage.
Okay, thank you. I'd like to know more about the traffic piece, which seems to be the contentious issue. So I appreciate that, and that's all I have. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Kayla.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Fair. And through to Kayla, hopefully we can get some more information on the traffic aspect, as the councillor was asking. Any other questions from the committee? Okay, we'll go to Councillor Bell.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you to Kayla. Two specific questions. Is the zoning bylaw amendment proposal specific to just this one lot? It's not a general zoning bylaw amendment.
Through the chair to Council Bell, that's correct. It is site specific to 12 Park Hill Lane.
And second question then, do we have any precedents for this kind of zoning bylaw amendment?
Through the chair, I will have to get back to you on that question at the recommendation stage.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Bell. That's actually a good question, because if we look beyond this, what are the implications? Any other questions from committee? Okay, I don't see any. And if I miss your hand, I apologize. Everybody's just a little square on my computer, and I may miss it. So if I do, don't be afraid to shout out. But I don't see any hands raised. So at this point, I'm going to ask our planners or staff, is there anybody in our waiting room or online that wishes to speak to this application? Okay, I see Shelby. So what I'll do is I'll declare this part of the meeting open to the public, and I'll invite anyone that wishes to speak to the application to please do so. And I guess, Shelby, we'll go to you then, since you're the applicant. Are you on mute or no?
I'm unmuted.
Okay, so go ahead then, and yeah, do your presentation.
Mayor David Bailey and councilors, I would like to thank you for taking the time out of your day to review my case. I am Shelby Stone, the owner and operator of Sugar and Spice Bakery, located out of my residence at 12 Park Hill Lane, Paris. My baked goods have always been handmade out of my home in a health board approved and certified separate kitchen. Prior to building our home on Park Hill Lane, my husband and I resided at 58 James Street in Paris. I've been operating my business out of my home since 2013. I'm a 4th generation Paris resident who has attended elementary and high school in Paris. Prior to opening my business, I worked in Paris as a County of Brant employee for 12 years. For the past 3 years, I was selling my products from a vendor booth at Wincy Mills. Due to changes related to the pandemic starting March 2020 and related financial restraints during this time, I was no longer able to continue selling my product at Wincy Mills. As a result, I moved my customer pickups to my residence, as this is how I originally began my operating my business when I lived on Jane Street. I had no issues with my neighbors or my customers picking up their orders or any complaints about how my business was operated. Since moving to my new home, I was not aware of any bylaws affecting my ability for customer pickups. As a result of the pickups that occur each week, there has been a complaint submitted to the county regarded as you are using the residence for your business. Customers are attending the location to pick up goods. I am and have been for the last 7.5 years a small business specializing in made-to-order bakery goods. My clientele are locals, family, friends, and neighbors. Despite my neighborhood being so new, I have several neighbors who walk across the street or down the block to pick up their orders from me. All of my goods are perishable and my business is not large. I am a one-woman operation, with this business being my means to support my growing family and pay my bills. All I am looking for is to be allowed to continue having customers pick up their orders from my home. My main, but not only, pickup day is Saturday, in which I stipulate a 4-hour window for my customers to pick up at prearranged times. There are sometimes a few pickups on Fridays for those who could not come on Saturdays. Since the complaint, I have made a space available in my driveway for customers to pull into so they do not need to stop or park on the street. Due to circumstances out of my control, out of everyone's control, I have had to adapt during this pandemic and I have put in place good social distancing practices. My customers must call or text when they arrive, and I come out with their baked goods and place them in their trunk. The customer is not required to leave their vehicle and are at my home for approximately 2 minutes. On my street and in my neighborhood, there has been a high volume of traffic due to all the construction vehicles parked or driving around to various job sites. This traffic is not long-term. However, there also has been an increase in delivery companies from online products and food ordering. Coupled with this being a new subdivision, there is many people driving through to check out the progress. I have witnessed this on a daily basis. I was the first home built in my neighborhood in 2018. I have watched it grow and develop over the last 3 years. I see the amount of construction, delivery, and sightseeing traffic from my bakery kitchen window at the front of my house. The people that have come to pick up their orders at designated times are but a small dent in the overall number of vehicles that traverse my neighborhood daily. I will never cause an increase in the amount of traffic that is currently present. My production will not increase from what it is now. I am at my maximum. In fact, it will start to slow down as I am 6 months pregnant and need to take it easy. Even in the future, when my child is grown, it will not get any busier than what it currently is now. As again, I'm a one-woman operation. I'm not allowed to have employees with my home-based business, of which I have none. Any claims to the contrary are categorically false. During these difficult times, we need to be supporting small local businesses. This is what Paris is about. I support local businesses within my community, and I appreciate everyone who has been supporting my small business during this time. The county itself has been supporting my small business on multiple occasions over the years, with cupcake decorating camp, gingerbread house kits, as well as many other delicious products, including the Pride cake Mayor David Bailey got to cut into for the inaugural Pride flag raising. #LoveLocalBrand. And to quote the mayor, our community has shown kindness in so many different ways. COVID-19 has been stressful on many people for many different reasons. Be kind when you can, listen more than you speak, practice patience, and understand even when it is most difficult. Please do your part. Thank you again for your time and consideration in addressing this matter.
Okay, thank you, Shelby. We'll just ask the committee if they got any questions for you at this time. And I see a couple hands raised, so we'll go with Councillor Pierce first.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you to Shelby. Shelby, thank you for what you do. I've tasted it and they are very good. Question I have for you, on your busiest Saturday, how many vehicles do you think you would have picking up?
On average, on a Saturday on the busiest, I have about 19.36 pickups.
Okay, and you say that's over like 4 hours or so, right?
That's
and it's all scheduled.
Yeah, on a Saturday, I do pickups between 9 and 1.
Okay, thank you very much.
Okay, we'll go to Councillor House next.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Shelby, thank you for the presentation. Pierce asked one of the questions I was going to ask, but I do want everyone to, I want us all to have a sense of your scale. And so Councillor Pierce was asking about Saturdays. Just to clarify, you in your presentation, your business is generally a Friday and Saturday operation. It's just you. And from your response to Councillor Pierce, it sounds like based on a 4-hour window of customer engagement, you're looking at it on your busiest day, 5 cars per hour for 4 hours.
Correct.
That's correct. And what does a Friday look like then? And I guess then my subsequent question is, are we okay to assume that you would be prepared to commit to a window of operation that was 2 or maybe 3 specific days a week?
Yes, it's just hard sometimes if someone needs, say, and it won't be a large pickup or anything, but if one-off someone needs a birthday cake on a Wednesday.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
And they've decided to do that. So not many pickups are during the beginning of the week. They are mostly at the end of the week where more celebrations are happening. Or
Sure. So if Saturday's your biggest day and we just kind of painted that picture, what's a Friday look like, just so we have a real sense of the scale of your operation?
On average, a Friday would be 5.58 pickups.
Okay, so 5 people and a half a person coming in for whatever they're picking up, and that's over again a 2 or 3 hour window.
That's still the same 4-hour window from the 9 to 1. So just depending on what time they do pick up between that window.
Right. So in that case, it's maybe 2 or 3 people an hour tops.
Right.
Okay. Thank you, Shelby.
Thank you.
Okay, do we have any other questions from the committee? Okay, Councillor Ferrier.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you to Shelby. Shelby, thanks for coming out today. Tonight or staying in tonight, or if they're coming to us tonight, and thanks for a very eloquent presentation.
Thank you.
I know it can be very, very difficult, especially with all the other things going on in the world and at home. I just want to ask you about the space itself. You have a professionally, through you, Mr. Chair, to Shelby, a professionally made kitchen. You don't have any retail space or retail lighting or big cash register or a lineup of folks. This isn't like it was at the Wincy. This is scheduled through online means, cashless, and either curbside or now it sounds like parking lot side, correct?
Correct. Yes, everything's paid up front, just so I can confirm that they're going to go ahead with the order. So all contactless, no one comes in, there's no need for that. I run out to their vehicle, drop it in their trunk, and off they go.
Okay. And you're looking at, on a 3-day weekend when that's happened, at most 30 vehicles doing that sort of thing.
Yes, yeah, I have an average per week is 27.35 pickups all week.
I appreciate your statistical analysis and the decimal points. I know you've done your research on this, but okay, I just wanted to, because I asked that question about scale and scope, and when we hear terms like commercial business, I want to make sure that the picture is painted accurately of that doesn't mean retail, which is a very different thing. I wouldn't support a retail space in a
Councillor Ferrier, we're asking questions. We're not debating it at the moment.
Yep, I'm just explaining why I asked that question.
No, I know, but I don't want to get, you know what I'm saying? I don't want to get into the debate. That's not for tonight. Any other questions for the applicant? Okay, seeing none, I will go to the public. Staff, do we have anybody here tonight from the public that wishes to speak to this application?
Excuse me, Mr. Chair. No, there are no members of the public present to speak to this application.
Okay, Thank you, Adam. Okay, seeing nobody from the public, we've had our chance to ask questions. I'm going to ask for a motion to receive this and move it on in this process. So I see a hand from Councillor House moving it. Do I see a seconder?
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
after this motion is handled, I have a second motion related to this application that I would like to raise, please.
Second, not an amendment, but a second motion is what you're
Correct.
saying. Okay. We'll go to you after we voted on this, and yeah. Councillor Bell seconds it. Appreciate it.
And just to be clear, because I was listed on the in the notes to present this the original motion.
Okay.
Just so everyone is clear, that it's moved by myself and seconded by Councillor LaFerrier that the presentations made regarding this application be received as information and referred to staff for further analysis.
Okay, and it's seconded by Councillor Ferrier. Perfect. Any discussion on that motion? Councillor Bell?
A question related to the motion.
Yes.
Whilst the motion is, if the motion is accepted and staff address the issue, what state do we leave Shelby's business in the meanwhile?
That's
to staff. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Yeah, that's a good question. What are we doing in the meantime? So I'll go to staff for an answer on that one.
So I can answer that through the chair to council. The application was brought forward as a result of a bylaw complaint, and the applicant has submitted the application as a sort of mechanism to conform. And so what we typically say is that as they're working towards compliance, they can continue on until such time that a decision has been made, and then sort of decide what to do from there based on the decision. So there will be no changes necessary at this time.
Thank you.
Okay. Any questions on the motion? Okay, I'll call it on. Oh, Councillor Wheat, you're
I don't think you really need the second motion. That's standard. All comments go to staff on any application when we receive information.
Yeah. Okay, all in favor of the motion? Opposed? Any? Okay. See none. Councillor House, what did you want to discuss regarding this matter?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move that we reduce the fee for this application by 50%. I seek a seconder, and once it's on the table, I'll explain my rationale.
Mr. House, I'm not going to allow that motion unless you explain your rationale, because something like that, I'd like to see a notice of motion or something referred to staff, or I need to see why, I guess, is what I'm asking.
Well, I am prepared to explain my rationale now, Mr. Chair, if you will allow.
Okay, I'm not going to allow it. I'd rather see a notice of motion or something that allows us to prepare. Okay, and I know I get frustrated when I sit there and I have a motion come out that I don't have time to do my homework on that. So I'm not going to allow that. But at the same time, it's not to say that you can't give us a notice of motion. Give us something to go with. Okay, that's my ruling on that. Okay, muted myself. We're going to move on to the next application, and this is actually for a decision. And this is zoning bylaw amendment application ZBA 7-20-N 73 and 81 West River Road. And first off, I'll turn to our planner, Dan. And now we've seen this before. Dan, I don't know if you have to go through the whole application again, or do you just want to highlight anything that's changed since the first time? But I'll leave that up to your discretion.
Giving me the options here, that's good. I do have a brief presentation, just kind of summarizing the changes between now and when it was previously presented, and then I'll just restate the reasons for the refusal recommendation, and then we will allow the applicants to present as well. So this application, ZBA 7-20, proposing to amend the zoning bylaw to permit development of the subject lands at 73 and 81 West River Road on partial services was originally presented at the December 1st, 2020 council meeting with a refusal recommendation from staff. A decision was deferred by the committee for one meeting cycle to allow staff to review any information available that would indicate the protection of land use rights as a result of the update from previous zoning bylaw 110.1 to current zoning bylaw 61.16. So this request was generated based on the opinion by the agent on behalf of the applicants, claiming that rights to develop the subject lands on partial services were removed as a result of the zoning bylaw update. The agent claimed that it was council's intentions that no rights would be removed as part of the zoning bylaw update to the current zoning bylaw. Based on planning staff's review, as outlined on page 34 of the agenda package, there has been no documentation indicated or indication that any specific submissions or appeals were made by the property owners of the subject lands during the public consultation process to adopt the current zoning bylaw. The recommendation and planning analysis, including the staff report, remain unchanged as presented at the December council meeting. So as outlined in the staff report, planning analysis focuses on planning policy, including provincial policy statement, growth plan, official plan, and zoning bylaw. And I'll just identify again some constant themes that these policies touch on. So development within the primary urban settlement boundary of parish shall be on full municipal services, whether those are existing, available, and or planned. Development within the primary urban settlement boundary of Paris shall be an appropriate, efficient, sustainable, and compact form of development, avoiding the need for unjustified or uneconomical expansion and use of infrastructure. Development on partial services can be considered on an individual basis where deemed appropriate for infill, minor rounding out of development where permitted by bylaw or agreement to connect when full services are available, and development within settlement areas are to avoid land use patterns which may cause environmental or public health and safety related concerns. Based on the reasons outlined in the staff report, planning staff are of the opinion that this individual request for development on partial services is not appropriate, as this proposal is not considered a rounding out or infill development. Development of the subject lands as proposed on partial services within the primary urban settlement boundary of Paris is not considered efficient, sustainable, nor a compact form of development when considering the availability of planned full municipal services as outlined in the Paris Master Servicing Strategy. This application is not considered or is not consistent with policies of the provincial policy statement and does not conform to the growth plan and County of Brantford official plan. And for these reasons, planning staff are recommending refusal of this application. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Dan. Before we go to the applicant, are there any questions of clarification for the planner on this matter? Okay, Councillor House, and then Councillor Bell.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, through you. So to Dan, in very condensed layman's terms, am I understanding it right that down the road, when services expand to the edges of the Paris settlement boundary, this type of application could be brought forward again for this property? And in that scenario, there might actually be more houses there than what's being considered now, a higher level of density, if I read that correctly. Is that the short version on this?
Through you, Mr. Chair, to Councillor House, essentially, yeah, staff are looking at the development potential of these subject lands, given the size and shape, based on the potential for, the number of lots on partial services versus the potential of development on full municipal services. And the density that could be achieved on full services is far greater than what would be achieved on partial services. So that's where the efficiency of land use and planned infrastructure comes into play.
Thank you.
Councillor Bell?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. I had two questions to the planning group. At the last session, I said that I had heard when I was involved in the zoning bylaw update, the very same thing that Mr. Van Porten had heard, that no individual would be put to a disadvantage through this zoning bylaw amendment. What I had not appreciated was there is a little caveat with that, that as long as they make their concerns known at the time, there would be no disadvantage to them. Perhaps the planning department could comment on that.
Yeah, unfortunately, it's really difficult to track those intentions if they're not documented throughout the review process. You know, given we do have scenarios and tools such as legal non-conforming status given to existing situations that would not conform with a new bylaw but did conform prior to that new bylaw. So perhaps the translation was lost during the review. I wasn't part of those reviews, so unfortunately I wasn't able to, or I'm not able to speak to how those intentions were shared.
Mr. Chair, if I may, I mean, clearly it wasn't memorialised, and that's a disappointment. If the statement was made, it should have been memorialised. And I guess there's some learning in there for us as we go forward. I have one more question, if I may, Mr. Chair.
Yep, second question.
On page 37, where we talk about the land use patterns within settlement areas shall be based on densities and a mix of land uses which are appropriate for the infrastructure and public services facilities which are planned or available. Well, we have got facilities, we have got services that are planned, we have services that are available. My comment would be there are 750 homes on the golf course that are going to get fully serviced. And yet, if you go immediately to the east, there are many residential lots which are on partial servicing. And it's a question in my mind about where do you draw the natural line between what is there today and what is there tomorrow? What is the argument against saying, actually, those two lots are actually more akin to the residential lots to the east rather than the huge residential development to the west?
Dan?
Through you, Mr. Chair, to Councillor Bell, I think staff are again just looking at the potential long-term planning potential of development of those parcels given their size and the shape.
Maybe Matt wants to add something to it.
Yes, thanks very much. And through the chair, and in follow-up to Dan's comments, you know, as we get these applications today, we have to analyze them against the policies of today. The provincial policy statement and the growth plan for the Greater Golden Horseshoe, they look very different today than they did likely when the lands to the east were developed. It's likely the growth plan didn't even exist, you know, back when the lands to the east were developed. So we have, you know, as we've been talking about growth management type things we have to be considering as we're reviewing these new applications. These are the kinds of things that we have to include in our reports and as part of our analysis. So that is another layer of our analysis.
So if I one final question, if we reject or if we support the proposal from planning, what options could you offer to the applicants as they go forward?
Through the chair, one option really could just be a matter of waiting until services are available at this property. There are other options for them to explore as well. You know, as a property owner, I won't go into some of those other options because they're not necessarily planning related. But in terms of the services that are going to be available, it might just be a matter of playing the waiting game for them right now.
And very final question, can you give any sense of when that time frame will be?
And through the chair, I don't have those numbers at my disposal now. So I shouldn't be commenting because I just don't know the answer, but it's something that we can follow up with council on.
Thank you.
Or the committee, I should say. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Bell. And Matt, I'm going to follow up on Councillor Bell's question. I would like to know, and I think some of the committee would like to know, and certainly the applicants would like to know, how long is that waiting game? Because 8 years to a young person is maybe not the same to someone who's plus 65. So I understand maybe we have to go to Rob Walton or whatnot to find out, but if we could at least get some idea, that would be appreciated. Okay, I'm going to go to Councillor Gatward now to ask the planner.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Through you, I asked that question of staff earlier this week. When would the servicing be available out in that area? And it's more in the phase 3 area of the golf course. And it could be 8 years before the servicing is out there and the homes in phase 3 are built. That's what I was told, or it could be longer. It just depends on the economy and how fast homes are selling and being built. And so there's no definite answer, but 8 years was the number I was given yesterday when I talked to staff about this and asked my questions, which when I viewed this property, I felt that these lots would be very compatible with the homes in the existing area. And only on water, they can't, in my opinion.
Councillor Gatward, do you have a question for staff?
No, that's all, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate the answer though to Councillor Bell's question. Any other questions for planning on this matter? Okay, see none. We will turn it over to the applicant. Rob, you're going to do the speaking, and you know the drill. You got 10 minutes for your presentation. Doesn't include question time, and Adam will be putting the timer on. So just like
absolutely. Thank you, thank you, Mr. Chair, and congratulations on your new appointment. In order not to be repetitive, Mr. Chair, I forwarded to the committee a transcript of my presentation of December 1st, and I noticed that it was on the agenda or in the agenda package, and also included Mr. Ruska's transcript. As indicated by the planner, our two clients own two properties on the far extreme east of the Paris settlement area on the north side of West River Road. And as noted, only water is available on the property, and we've requested a rezoning to allow partial services on these lots by way of a zoning exception. And as noted by the previous questioners, the reason is obviously we don't know when services are going to be available. They're not available now, and they're not available in the near future. And they're tied to the 700 plus lot subdivision of the Paris Golf Course. I'm going to direct my current presentation to the reasons for refusal as listed in the staff report. The first and second recommendation is that the development of the lands on parcel services is not appropriate, efficient, sustainable, and compact form of development when considering the availability of planned full municipal services. And the second point is the Paris Master Servicing Plan is currently being developed to service the full build out of the Paris development. We would agree, Mr. Chair, that if full services are available, I think you would see a far different form of development there, probably 2 to 3 times the number of units that Mr. Ruska and Mr. Huppert are proposing. And it is just a proposal. Further applications to this committee or the Committee of Adjustment will not be made and considered by the municipality. The report does not, however, address timelines when these services are available. And And we were advised, I guess, when we first started this process by a senior planner that it would be 10 to 20 years before full services are available. And as noted, the development would be far different than what is currently being proposed. The proposed development, if services were available, would be 11-meter wide lots instead of the 20-meter wide proposed now. The main problem with that is compatibility. And as pointed out by Councillor Gatward and others, there is a sizable development or community, I guess, on the south side of West River Road that are on parcel services on large estate-sized lots. And certainly what is being proposed on parcel service on our clients' lands would be compatible with those developments. Very compatible with those developments, having the same servicing capability. I have to point out that the word compatibility or incompatibility within your official plan is mentioned 50 times. So that, this is the main issue, compatibility. And in fact, your official plan says, requires that from a residential standpoint, density, height, and character of proposed development must be compatible with existing adjacent uses. And certainly the parcel service development that would be proposed ultimately on our clients' lands would be compatible with the existing partially serviced properties on the opposite side of West River Road. The other point mentioned by in the report, and it's the third and fourth reason for refusal, is the provincial policy statement. Mr. Chair, I have to remind the committee that in 2010, this council adopted a new official plan, which is the current official plan 2012, or referred to as 2012 official plan, and directed that the plan be directed and forwarded to the Ministry of Municipal Affairs for approval. A municipal council cannot adopt policies, planning policies that are not compatible with both the provincial policy and the growth plan. In fact, you have a statement within your official plan that says this plan implements the direction and policies of the provincial policy statement and growth plan for the Greater Golden Horseshoe. That does not mean part of the official plan, the total official plan. And then we go to the plan was ultimately approved by the province in August of 2012. And again, both the municipality and the province cannot pass documents that are not in compliance with the provincial policy and growth plan. Your current official plan has policies in respect to allowing partially serviced development upon a site-specific basis, which is what we applied for. So clearly what we've applied for, in my opinion, is in compliance with provincial policy statement and growth plan, because it's contained within the official plan, which is compliant with the provincial policy and growth plan. So I don't believe, even though we would prefer to see, or the municipality would prefer to see, development on that are more sustainable, more compact, you don't necessarily have to do that, because your official plan says you don't necessarily have to do that. We can do that on a site-specific basis. The last point of refusal is the application is not conforming with the general intent of the policies of the County of Brant official plan. Again, you have policies that talk about the allowing partially serviced developments. And there's also a requirement that the owner must enter into an agreement agreeing to hook up to full municipal services at his cost when they become available. That's a very important provision, and certainly has been used in the past. I know I did a severance a number of years ago where we had to include that provision within the development agreement of that severance. Ultimately, services were extended. I think it was water in that case, and they had to hook up, and they had to hook up at their sole cost. So in my opinion, the application is compliant with provincial policy, is compliant with the growth plan, and is in conformity with the official plan. In conclusion, therefore, Mr. Chair and members, I believe the application is appropriate from a planning sense. This is not a large subdivision that we're going to see partially serviced lots. It is a small parcel of land in a relative sense, where we're going to see some minor development in the extent of probably in total maximum, I would say 9 lots. You have to keep in mind that both our clients are retired surveyors, so they're kind of very particular, I guess, what they're proposing. But certainly the development that is being proposed, or ultimately will be proposed, is in compliance with the various provincial and municipal policies, and compliant and in conformity and compatible with lots on the opposite side of West River Road. Mr. Chair, I can respond to questions. I believe Mr. Sepruska is also in attendance, who may wish to add some comments.
Okay, yeah, before we open it up to questions for the applicant, we'll go to Mr. Ruska if you want to add anything, Mr. Ruska, to Rob's presentation. Go ahead.
Unmute. Yeah.
Okay, Mr. Mayor and councillors, good evening. Firstly, I would like to address a comment made by Mr. Namizniak at our December meeting. He stated that we had the opportunity to object when the zoning was being introduced. My answer to that is, why would I object when the number of lots that I would now be allowed on my property increased from 3 to 5? I was happy to hear that, and a reasonable expectation would be that I would be provided with services along West River Road. Logic would dictate that if the county changes the zoning, then the county would provide what is necessary for private landowners to be able to comply with that zoning, and within a reasonable time. And as to the notion in the zoning process that no harm should be done to landowners, does that even have to be said? Why do we even have to search for a statement in the records? Is it not the obligation of the planning department and the zoning process to work in the best interest of taxpayers, to do no harm? In the planning report with respect to the statement, quote, permitting private sewage systems may cause environmental and public health concerns, end quote. Our properties slope away from the proposed subdivision. We are at a substantially lower elevation than the Grand River subdivision, Paris Grand subdivision. Therefore, it is impossible for there to be any flow or leaching from our properties toward that 700 lot subdivision. It is more likely that there would be leaching from the subdivision toward our properties and the Grand River. And a reminder also that we're just asking for partial services that would not be permanent until such time. They would be temporary until such time as sewers came down our street. And regarding my property, I have owned the property for 13 years. I should not be expected to wait indefinitely for services. I simply cannot afford, nor do I have the time to wait any longer. My property is legally a lot of record, as there was a single family dwelling on it just a few years ago.
I would prefer to sever my land into 2 or 3 lots. If that is not possible, I have no option but to build a single house on a 200-foot by 200-foot lot, or sell it to a builder who might build an estate, which would clearly not be efficient use of the land. Would it not make more sense to have a series of larger lots along my and George's properties? We believe that our properties developed in this fashion would not only blend with the other properties in the neighborhood, but would be an attractive transition from agricultural zone into the town of Paris. And moreover, is 700 lots not enough intensification that you also need to add George's and my lands? Thank you.
Okay, if that concludes the presentation from the applicant and your agent, I'm going to turn this over to the committee. Well, I'm going to go to the committee and see if they have any questions of clarification for either the applicant or for their agent, Mr. Van Porten. Okay, seeing none. Again, we've seen this a couple times now, this application. I'm going to ask our clerk before I declare this part of the meeting open to the public. Adam, is there anybody that in the waiting room or anybody that you're aware of that wants to speak to this application from the public?
Hi, Mr. Chair. No, there are no members of the public here to speak to this application.
Okay. Seeing none, then well, we would have to close it to the public because we didn't open it to the public. So we'll bring it back into committee. And are there any further questions, or does anybody want to give some comment? We'll go first to Councillor House.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just wanted to clarify, I'm still working through this in my head, and I wanted to direct a question back to Dan, if that's okay with you.
Yep.
Dan, again, I'm maybe oversimplifying this, but if we refuse this application, somewhere down the road, a developer perhaps buys these properties and builds a bunch of houses. More houses than are being considered in this scenario. If we don't refuse this application, then a couple of local property owners, one that's owned it for decades and one that's owned it for 13 years, might build a small number of houses. Is that accurate?
Yeah.
Mr. Chair, Councillor House. As the applicant outlines, I forget which parcel it is, the smaller parcel is currently vacant. They would be permitted a building permit today, given that it is an existing lot of record, and they would be able to obtain that building permit. The other parcel already contains that existing dwelling. In the current zone, there are no provisions that, in the current zone, full services would be required given the size and shape of the lots required, being that 11 meters of frontage, 360 square meters of area. So the lot size requirement is much smaller. It's intended to be on full services. So any further development of that larger parcel, even on the smaller parcel, would require full services. So this application is required in order to permit any additional dwelling units on those parcels.
Follow up, Mr. Chair, please.
Yeah, go ahead.
So Dan, though, if this application is refused, and let's say 10 years from now, the master, the servicing's done, there is servicing out there, that's a scenario that results in potentially more houses out there than in this scenario, correct?
That is correct. So we would be looking at a plan of subdivision or a condominium, or perhaps it's developed as part of an existing development. That would be the scenario.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor House. Anybody else have any questions or wish to make a comment on this? Okay, see none. I will go to who has the motion on this one for the recommendation. Councillor Wheat, please present. And tell us who your seconder is as well.
Yes, it's moved by myself and seconded by Councillor McAlpine that application ZBA 7-20-DN from J.H. Cahoon on behalf of Mr. Hubert and Mr. Ruska at 73 and 81 West River Road be refused.
Okay. So you've heard the recommendation. The recommendation is to refuse this application. So I'm going to call the vote, but you're going to have to indulge us a little bit because I think we might have a few for and a few against. So I'm going to ask that you hold up your hands until Adam tells us to take him down, okay? Just so I know he's got a proper count. So all in favor of refusal?
Mr. Chairman, I'd ask for a recorded vote, please.
Okay, I wish you'd done that. Okay, that's fine.
I was on mute.
No, that's fine.
Sorry.
That's fine. No, that's fine. Adam, can you take care of the recorded vote then?
Certainly, Mr. Chair. So those all those in sorry, Councillor Gatward, are you in favor or against?
I'm against the refusal.
Okay. Mayor Bailey?
I'm for the refusal.
Councillor Wheat?
I support the refusal.
Councillor McAlpine?
For the refusal.
Councillor Howes?
I'm against the refusal.
Councillor LaFerrier?
I'm against the refusal.
Councillor Bell?
I'm against the refusal.
Councillor Pierce?
I'm against the refusal.
Councillor Chambers?
I vote no.
Councillor Coleman?
For the refusal.
Councillor Miller?
I vote against the refusal.
Okay. So the motion is lost 7-4.
Okay, thank you very much, Adam. Okay, that motion is lost. I'm going to look to the committee. Is there another recommendation? Councillor Gatward, you are the only one I see with your hand raised, so go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The new recommendation would be as printed there, to permit development on partial services on lots requiring a minimum lot frontage of 20 meters and a minimum of lot area of 1,000 square meters be approved.
Thank you, and I believe that meets the requirements. I need a seconder for that. Okay, we'll go with Councillor Chambers. Any discussion or questions on the new motion before us, the new recommendation? I think we all understand, I would hope. Okay. All in favor? And please hold your hand up until Adam says we can take him down.
Okay.
Okay. And we can take him down now. All opposed?
Motion is carried.
Okay. Thank you, Adam. To Rob Van Porten, Mr. Ruska, and Mr. Hubert, this recommendation you've just heard is to approve. This is not finalized. This has to go to our council meeting later this month, where this will come up again in our planning application report, just so you know. And if you're not quite clear on that, I think you guys are, but if you're not, I know Mr. Van Porten could fill you in on that process. Okay, so thank you for coming out, and we have to keep moving on. So
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members.
Thank you, Rob. We'll go to our next one, and just bear with me because I got to scroll down on my report. And okay, so this takes us, next up is, I believe I'm at the right one, 9.2, report -21-01, zoning bylaw amendment application ZBA 20/AW, and this is from Amanda. And Amanda, do you want to go ahead and speak to it?
Sure, thank you. Through the chair, thank you, through the chair. The applicant is proposing to rezone the retained lands from agricultural and natural heritage to agricultural with a site-specific provision 164 and natural heritage. The site-specific zoning would recognize an undersized farm parcel of 36.2 hectares and also prohibit a dwelling. Staff note a dwelling is not permitted on the portion of the subject land zoned as natural heritage. The applicant applied for a surplus dwelling severance, which was approved by the Committee of Adjustment in June 2020 with a condition requiring the rezoning. No public comments have been received and staff are recommending approval. Staff can answer any questions the committee may have. Thank you.
Great, thank you, Amanda. Are there any questions of clarification for planning? Okay, seeing none, I will ask, is there an applicant to speak to this?
Mr. Chair, just confirming with Amanda, there is no applicant or agent present, right?
Through the chair, that's my understanding.
Yep, thank you.
Okay, seeing none, before I open it up to the public, do we have anybody from the public that is here that will be speaking to this? Do we know?
Also, Mr. Chair, there are no members of the public here to speak to this application.
Okay. Thank you, Amanda. Okay, so we'll bring it in. Can I get a mover for this? It was, point out, it was originally me. So can I get a mover for this recommendation? Okay, we'll move Councillor Bell, second by Councillor Pierce. Any discussions or questions before we call the vote? Seeing none, all in favor? And thank you, all opposed? Okay, carried. We will go to the next one. Again, bear with me while I scroll down. Okay, so this will take us to 9.3, and this is report 21-02, zoning bylaw amendment application, ZBA 42/20/AW. I'm guessing the AW stands for Amanda Wazinski, so we will go to Amanda. And if you want to present, Amanda, that would be appreciated.
Thank you. The applicant, through the chair, the applicant is proposing to rezone the severed lands from residential singles to a holding to prevent premature development due to the ongoing design and future construction of Cedar Street. The applicant applied for 2 severance applications, which were approved by the Committee of Adjustment in August 2020, with a condition of placing a holding on the severed parcels. This holding was a recommendation from staff, and this approach is consistent with other severance applications along Cedar Street. No public comments were received, and staff are recommending approval of the application. Staff can answer any questions the committee may have. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Amanda. Are there any questions for Amanda on this application from the committee? Okay, seeing none. Do we have anybody that wishes to speak to it, Amanda? Does the applicant wish to speak to it? Are they present?
I do believe the applicant is on the phone tonight, or the call, I should say.
Is that you, Mr. Stewart?
Yes. Hi, Mr. Chair. Just here for any questions. Thanks, Amanda, for the presentation and support the staff report.
Okay. Any questions for Mr. Stewart, the applicant for this recommendation? Okay, Mr. Stewart, you getting off easy? Okay. Adam, again, I'll go to you. Anybody that you're aware of on the meeting in the call that wishes to speak to this?
Hi, Mr. Chair. No, there are no members of the public here to speak to this application.
Okay. So I will look to the floor to see if we can get a mover for this recommendation in a second. Councillor McAlpine?
Yeah, moved by myself and seconded by Councillor Coleman that application ZB A42-20-AW be approved.
Okay. Are there any questions, comments, or discussion on this application? Okay, seeing none, I'll call the vote. All in favor of the recommendation? Okay, and all opposed? I don't know if my internet's slow or we're all voting no on that one, but I'll leave it up to Adam to count the votes on that one.
Yeah, I believe the motion was carried, Mr. Chair.
Sometimes they get frozen in time and I see a lot of hands up. Okay, that'll take us to the next application. This is report 21-03 zoning bylaw amendment application ZBA 43/20/AW. And again, it's on Cedar Street. And again, it's Amanda. So Amanda, you want to go ahead and present this please to the committee?
Thank you, through the chair. The applicant is proposing to rezone the severed lands from residential singles to a holding to prevent premature development, similar to the last application. The applicant applied for the severance applications and these were approved by the Committee of Adjustment in October 2020 with a condition of placing a holding. Again, this condition was a recommendation from staff, which is consistent with other applications along Cedar Street. No public comments were received and staff are recommending approval of the application. And I can answer any questions the committee may have. Thank you.
Sorry, while we got Amanda, any questions for Amanda on this application from the committee? Okay, seeing none. Again, Amanda, do we have the applicant here that wishes to speak to it?
Chair Miller, we do have the agent on the call right now, Eric.
Okay. Eric, is there anything you want to present that you want to highlight for the committee?
No, other than that we reviewed the staff report and listened to Amanda's presentation and we're in agreement and we're here to answer any questions.
Okay, I appreciate that. Are there any questions from committee members for the applicant on this application? Okay, seeing none. And Adam, is there anybody from the public that wishes to speak to this application that you're aware of?
Hi, Mr. Chair. No, there are no members of the public here to speak to this application.
Okay, so no members of the public. We'll bring this in and I will look to the floor for a mover on the recommendation from staff. Councillor Coleman.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Moved by myself, second by Councillor Chambers, that the recommendation be approved.
Okay, appreciate that. Is there any questions or discussion or comment on the recommendation before us? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All in favor? Okay, I'll ask any opposed. Okay, that's carried. That will take us to the next one, and this is report 21-05, and this is zoning bylaw amendment application ZBA 30/20/DN. And we did have an information session on this one earlier. This is for the west side of Cathcart, former township of Burford. I know we referred it back to staff for further information. I'm guessing Dan started this, but I guess it's Kayla that will be presenting. So Kayla, I'll turn it over to you.
Yes, thank you. So this is an application proposing to change the zoning on a portion of the subject lands within the hamlet of Cathcart from agricultural to residential hamlet with a special exemption. The purpose of the application is to permit future creation of 4 residential lots. And the application also requires relief for lot area. The subject lands are located on the west side of Cathcart between Highway 53 and the 6th Concession Road. The lands are currently being farmed and are surrounded by rural residential uses. The retained lands are approximately 7 hectares in size, and they have frontage on Highway 53 and 6th Concession. They will be used continuous for agricultural purposes. At the information presentation, council asked if the hamlet boundaries were correct on the mapping and if the proposed lots were indeed outside of the hamlet boundary. It has been confirmed that the hamlet boundary is correct and accurate in the attached mapping, and the proposed lots are within the designation of the hamlet boundary. It is the opinion of staff that the zoning amendment is consistent with the provincial policy statement, conforms to the growth plan and the County of Brant official plan, and for these reasons, planning staff recommends approval of the application.
Okay, thank you, Kayla. Any questions for our planner on this application? Okay, seeing none. Yeah, Kayla, you're correct. We were wondering about the exact lines in the official plan. Is there the applicant here tonight to speak to this? Do we know?
I am, Mr. Chair, and I'll be very brief. Kayla did an excellent job of describing the intent of the application. And you were absolutely correct. I think the main question at the last meeting was the boundary of the settlement area, and it has been confirmed that all 4 proposed lots are within the settlement area of Cathcart. The zoning is very simple. It seeks rezoning of the 4 lots, as well as an exception to recognize a minor deficiency in lot area from the 3,000 that is normally required within the hamlet zoning to 2,730. Mr. Chair, I can respond to, as pointed out, the balance of the 7.4 hectares, I believe it is, will continue to be zoned and designated agriculture and continue to be used for that purpose. Mr. Chair, I can respond to questions.
Okay, thank you, Rob. Yeah, I did forget. It was Howard that started this application and you guys stepped up, if I recall correct.
Yes, we picked up some of Howard's files.
Okay. Are there any questions for the applicant on this application? It's a quiet group tonight. Okay. No questions for Rob. Adam, do we have anybody from the public that wishes to speak to this here?
Mr. Chair, there are no members of the public here to speak to this application.
Okay, thank you. Seeing that, then I will bring it to the committee and ask if there is a mover for the recommendation before us. And if there is, they forgot about it. So is it Councillor Gatward?
I think Councillor Gatward's trying to say something, but was on mute.
Sorry, I was muted. I believe that Councillor Miller was the mover and I was the seconder. So I'll be pleased to move it, and someone else.
Moved by Councillor Gatward. Okay, thank you. Okay, moved by Councillor Gatward, second by Councillor Perrier. Any discussion before we call the question? Brian, you have your hand up? You just ready to vote? Okay.
Yep.
All in favor? And I'll ask if there's any opposed. I see none. That's carried. That'll bring us to the next one, and this is RPT 21-04, which is the zoning bylaw amendment application ZBA 3420/KD. And this is, of course, 22 Airport Road, former township of Brantford. Looking at a special exemption 8 M18 zone to permit cannabis. Kayla, this is yours. And I'm going to ask you to present to the committee, please.
Yes, thank you. So this is an application to amend the County of Brant zoning bylaw, and the applicant is proposing to modify the existing Prestige Industrial M1/8 zone to permit cannabis production and processing as an additional permitted use. The application is required in order to allow the use to operate on the subject lands within a portion of the existing building. The proposed zoning does not seek to remove any of the existing uses. It is just requesting the addition of the cannabis production and processing, where the production and manufacturing will take place entirely within the existing building. The subject lands are located on the north side of Colburn Street West, and the lands are currently used for industrial purposes and include several large industrial buildings for brick manufacturing and a school bus site. The lands are surrounded by industrial and employment uses to the north and east, the County of Brant Fire Hall located to the west, and commercial and residential uses are located south along Colburn Street. Staff note that a site plan application is required if the zoning application is approved. And in addition, a holding provision has been included in the bylaw to ensure that the site plan approvals are in place prior to any change of use or development on the site. I should note that the holding provision will only apply to the portion of the building that is proposed for the cannabis production and processing use. I did receive a call from a neighboring business that presented concerns with the potential impacts of odor from the proposed use. And in response to this concern, I have ensured them that air treatment control is required, and that site plan control is the mechanism that planning uses to ensure proper air treatment control is in place through a Section 41 agreement, which is registered on title. I should also note that as per council's request at the information meeting, staff have increased the circulation on this file to 150 meters. Overall, it is the opinion of staff that the zoning amendment is consistent with the provincial policy statement, in conformity with the growth plan, and in conformity with the County of Brant official plan. Planning staff support the proposal and recommend the application be approved, subject to a holding provision and site plan control. I'm happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Kayla. I will turn it over to the committee. Are there any questions to our planner on this application? Okay, Councillor Gatward, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, or sorry, Mr. Chair. Yes, through you to Kayla. Kayla, you mentioned that they wanted to use a portion of the building. And at the last meeting, I think I asked production and processing what that meant. And it was that they were going to grow cannabis inside the building. Is the production actually processing the cannabis into products? That's my first question.
Yeah.
Sure. So through the chair, I will direct that question to the agent. They may be able to specify exactly what will be happening in that building. So I believe Kuhn Engineering is on the line to speak to the application, and I'll direct that question to.
Well, just hold on. Yeah, hold on to that question. We'll ask Bob when or Mr. Phillips when he comes up. Joan, do you got any other questions for our planner, for staff?
Yeah. I can hold that question and ask the.
Yeah, we will.
Applicant. The recommendation is to approve with an H for the site plan. It was my understanding when we first saw cannabis legislation that if somebody was going to use or do cannabis in a building or on a site, that they could only do that and not have other uses in the building. Maybe that's changed. I don't know. I'm just a bit confused about that because there's going to be multiple uses in the building, is my understanding. So can someone clarify that for me? And the circulation, I'm pleased it was extended. And I noted in the report, it said that there was residential to the south, which is across the road on Colbert Street. But there's a huge Oak Hill subdivision area to the east that wasn't mentioned at all in here. And Kayla, you mentioned that the odors, I had a letter from a resident forwarded to me about that. And I believe the mayor did as well. I sent it off to you. So you've answered that question, saying that the odors will be contained within the building, correct?
Through the chair.
Okay, so yeah, just two questions there. So the first one you asked was, can they do cannabis production in a building that's also used for other facilities? And then the second question was about the odor. Let's go with the first question. Can they do cannabis? Can they do cannabis production in a building that also has other uses?
Through the chair, I'm going to turn that question over to Matt. He'll be able to speak to the additional use in the same building.
Okay.
Thanks, Kayla. Through the chair, my understanding of the regulations for production is that they'll need to create a physical separation between the two uses. So like it will have to be in its own space, and that will have to pass Health Canada regulations. So, and then in terms of odor, odor is definitely something that, you know, we are considering as part of all of these kinds of applications. We are controlling that through not only our zoning now, but also it's a requirement through our site plan control application that the applicant will have a certain amount of security that they'll have to put forward for air treatment control. They will have to provide an odor study that looks at the type of air treatment control that they're proposing, and that we have the ability to have that study peer reviewed to ensure that it's correct. So we have gone and will go to great lengths to make sure that the odor control system that they're proposing will work. And that is hopefully going to solve all of our odor issues with these kinds of facilities in the future.
Thank you, Matt.
Does that answer?
Thank you. Yes. And we're going to put this forward for approval, though, before we get all that information and work done.
Through the chair, that kind of work is all part of the site plan process. And so today, before this committee, you know, they're hearing and considering an application for the use itself. So the use would get established if the committee so chooses and council votes in favor of it later this month. And then we would implement all of those regulations and controls through the site plan process.
Okay, thank you for that. And I would request that the site plan be bumped up.
Okay.
Because of the large number.
We're happy to do that.
Thank
you.
you.
Every right to ask that. So, okay. Thank you, Councilor Gabbard. Any other questions for staff before we go to the applicant? I just have one, and I'll direct it to Matt because I know this is your wheelhouse. And we've heard it a couple times now. There was an email sent concerned about odor. I know Kayla received a phone call. A constituent has a concern about odor. I know at one time they were told to contact Health Canada. Is that still the way to go, or should they be contacting the county? Well, what should we as a councillor or the mayor, what should we be telling our constituents if they call us to complain about odor?
To the chair, are you referring to this application or odor complaints in general?
Well, let's go with this one, because this one I know was done not what do you call it, registration, but I think by the certification process.
Sure. So for this particular facility, if there is an odor issue in the future, it would be directed to our bylaw enforcement staff. If their air treatment control system is not working, we would have, well, first of all, it should be working. In order to get their security back for the system, they would have to demonstrate that it's working. So staff would be on site to check that it's working. But let's say for whatever reason the maintenance of the system isn't being done, and the system's not working, and there's odor that can be detected. It would be a bylaw enforcement issue, and then also they could contact Health Canada. Provided this is a commercially licensed facility, there are pretty strict guidelines, and if it's not, we still have the ability to enforce it through that Section 41 agreement.
Okay, so we'll go to bylaw. And I know Mr. Bergeron has Health Canada's number on speed dial for cannabis. So, okay, thank you. If there's no other questions, then we'll go to the applicant. And Mr. Phillips, I believe you're here to represent the applicant. So.
Yes, I am, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. Bob Phillips from Cahoon Engineering. This is an application from a numbered company, but it's the same owner of the former Jazz Brick operation that was located on this site. Those operations have wound down. They're no longer producing brick there, and they've been in the process of cleaning up the building. They made this application back last summer
in response to some inquiries from potential tenants, which included cannabis production operation. Through our discussions with staff, it was always clear to us, and certainly understanding that there would be a requirement for an odor study, and obviously that'll require some odor control equipment on the site. And we certainly agreed with staff that we'd handle that through the site plan approval process. Since that time, we're just trying to add that as another permitted use, and if it ever comes up in the future. Since that time, the owner has abandoned discussions about a cannabis operation. He will be trying to lease the building out to a warehouse type facility in the immediate future. But, you know, at this particular juncture, he just indicated to me that he would like to follow through and put the permitted use as an additional permitted use for the building. We understand the requirements coming forward that if we proceed with the cannabis, there's other studies that have to be done to facilitate that use. We've heard the planner talk about the inclusion of a holding provision, and through my discussions with the planner, it's my understanding the holding provision only applies to the cannabis operation, which we are totally in favor of. And short of that, we'd like to move ahead with the approval to add this as an additional use and potentially for the future. I'm here to answer any questions, and I must point out the owner was unable to attend tonight's meeting because of a personal health matter in the family. Otherwise, he would have been here. Thank you,
Okay.
Mr. Chairman.
I apologize, Mr. Phillips. Councilor Gatward had a question. But did Mr. Phillips answer your question, Joan? I want to be clear. And you're on mute. And we lost your video.
My question was with respect to several uses within the building and being able to grow it and process it into products. Okay. And were they going to do both? But I guess it sounds like the answer is who knows, because there might not even be cannabis in there.
The original, through you, Mr. Chairman, to the councillor, the original proposal was primarily to grow within the building. And you know, you never say never about processing and creating other products. But you're right, it's kind of something that will come up in the future. We certainly don't object to the bump up of a site plan application at the time if it ever comes forward. And from my understanding, and I'm certainly not a cannabis expert, that additional uses are permitted within the same building. And in fact, in this case, our setbacks from other sensitive land uses are predicated on only a portion of this building being used for the cannabis operation. I hope that answers your question.
Thank you. Yes.
Okay, do we have any other questions for Mr. Phillips on this application? Okay, seeing none, again, I go to you, Adam. Is there anybody from the public here to speak to this?
Hi, Mr. Chair. No, there are no members of the public here to speak to this application.
Okay, thank you. Well, I guess at this point, we're going to turn it over to the committee, and we'll see if we have a mover for the recommendation. See, Councillor Wheat, you have your hand up. Go ahead.
Yeah, just a comment and a caution to staff on odor, because we have a very large tenant out there, Confederation Freezers, which is a distribution center of food products. And my past experience here in St. George with Timco, they weren't going to have any orders either. I rest my case. So be very careful, because food at Confederation Freezers, food distribution, food products are very, very susceptible to taking on odor. I'm gonna just wanted to add that comment because I went through it in St. George with Timco, and Confederation Freezers is a big company for us, and that's food distribution there.
Thank you. Is there a mover for this recommendation?
So it's moved by myself and seconded by Councillor Pierce. The application ZPA 34-20 KD be approved subject to a holding provision.
Okay. Do we have any other speakers? Does anybody want to comment, ask any more questions? See none, I'll call the vote. Councillor Chambers, are you got a question or are you voting?
I was going to speak to the resolution, if that's okay.
Yeah, absolutely. Go ahead.
I would just encourage my colleagues to not support the resolution. We don't even know exactly what's going to be happening to approve the use at this time would be premature, in my opinion. So I think we should discourage the application and vote against the recommendation.
Okay, I'm gonna go to our planner based on what Councillor Chambers just said. And Kayla, can you clarify this? If we turn this application down, then if they come forward in the future, they would have to abide by the new cannabis bylaws that we passed a month or so ago, correct?
Through the chair, yes, that is correct. This application was received under the previous zoning bylaw regulations, and so the new policies and requirements of the zoning would be applicable if they resubmitted an application.
Okay, and just to be clear, in the bylaws that this came forward under, it allows within 150 meters of residential, and the new bylaws are 300 meters within residential. Am I correct on that?
Through the chair, I believe that the requirement with air treatment control is 150 meters, regardless whether it's the old or the new provisions.
Matt, can you weigh in on that? Maybe I misread them.
Yeah, through the chair, that's correct. So with air treatment control, the new provisions are 150 meters. The big difference really between the old and the new is all of the extra stuff, the light emissions, there are other new inputs into the zoning provisions for cannabis production and processing. So like Kayla had mentioned, if this was refused and sometime in the future a new application came forward, it would be under the new cannabis production and processing provisions.
Okay, I appreciate that. Okay, any more questions or comments? Councillor Gatward, I see your hand raised.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Through you to staff, this application is to permit a cannabis production and processing. And as Councillor Chambers said, now that it's not going to happen and the applicant is looking at using the space for warehousing, I would tend to agree with his statement. And through you to Matt or Kayla, if the applicant just wants to use the site for warehousing, they wouldn't need this application to go forward or another application to go forward, would they? Because in industrial, it's industrial and that would be a permitted use.
Through the chair to council, yes, that would be my opinion, that if they would like to use it for warehousing, it would not require a planning application for zoning.
So Miss,
Joan,
so one more question, if I may. So if this was
Okay, go ahead.
withdrawn, if this application was withdrawn, then it would just stay as it is, the zoning and the industrial and so on. But they wouldn't get their money back because we've gone through this whole circulation process. And is that correct?
Through the chair, yes, that is correct.
Okay.
Councillor House, I see you have a. Oh, go ahead, Joan. Are you want any more
Yeah,
questions?
I was just going to say, so we might as well vote on it. Yeah. Thank you.
Well, we will when we get to it. Councillor House.
Well, I'm a little confused now because it in simplified terms, it seems like we're being asked to vote on something that the applicant doesn't really want.
Yep, sometimes that happens.
All right. Thanks.
Mr. Phillips, I see your hand, I have your hand up, and I'll be honest with you, we normally don't include the applicant or their agent in the deliberations, but I'm going to go with you just if you have a point of clarification, because we are, as Councillor House admitted, he's a little confused, and I think a few others are too. So can you clarify that for us?
Certainly, you know, in good faith, my client and myself have gone through a process for the last 6 months to get to this point in this application. There are several properties in the county that are zoned already to have a cannabis operation, and some of those will never have cannabis operations just because of the market and or potential tenants. There certainly was a tenant involved here, and there's a substantial cost to go through this process. And we would like to add it as a permitted use to the property, understanding that it clearly has to go through a site plan approval process.
A point of order, Mr. Chairman.
Where all the technical issues have to be addressed
Yeah,
before
hold on,
that use
Rob.
can be
Go ahead.
established.
Go ahead, Councillor Chambers.
The resolution is before the committee, and the applicant is now resubmitting his application, and I think that's out of order at this point. If there was a clarification,
fair enough. Yeah, and that's, I was hoping just for the clarification.
Redo the application at this point.
Yeah. Okay. Fair enough. Fair enough. Okay. Any other questions? But there was, like I said, I just wanted clarification on the one point. Is there any other comments or questions on? Okay, we'll go to Councillor Bell. Go ahead.
Yeah. Just thank you, Mr. Chair. Just taking up Robert's point, and this is a question to staff. Is there any matter of principle that says an applicant can't apply to increase the activities that can be legally allowed on a site, even if they're not going to actually do it right now?
Can you answer that one?
Sure. So through the chair, it's the applicant's ability to apply for whichever zoning they would like to on a property. Whether they choose to implement that zoning and actually, have those uses on that site is up to them. So there's nothing stopping them from asking to have the additional permitted use, even if they don't intend to use it for that.
Thank you, Councillor Bell. I should just point out further to what Councillor House mentioned earlier. I do know this committee went through a huge application in Ward 4 for cannabis, and it got approved eventually. But at the end of the day, they never went ahead with it. So we do see it happen. Doesn't happen often because I don't think it's a cheap process. Any other speakers? Okay, see none. We do have a mover and a seconder, I believe. This is on the floor right now. Am I correct on that, Adam?
Yes, you're correct.
Okay, thank you. So we'll call the vote. All those in favor of the recommendation? Okay, Adam, you got a count?
I do. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay, all those opposed? Okay, and I believe that's defeated. So to Mr. Phillips, as you know, this will go to council, the meeting at the end of the month, and if you could let your client know, that'd be appreciated. Okay. Thank you. Bob.
Sorry, Mr. Chair, could we have a motion to the converse motion?
Yeah, we will. You know, I'll look to anybody that would like to make a motion, given the fact that we just defeated the recommendation. Okay, I'll go to Councillor Chambers.
The same motion, only that it be refused.
Be refused. Okay, do we have a seconder for Councillor Chambers? Councillor Coleman has his hand. Any questions, comments? Seeing none, I'll call that question. All in favor? All opposed? Okay, and that motion is carried. Adam, I believe you got the count.
Correct,
okay,
yes.
That concludes actually all our applications for tonight. That takes us to item 10, consent items to be approved and be received. Adam, I don't see any, but mind you, I'm not working with the modified addendum one. So if you see one, let me know.
Mr. Chair, there's no items between 10 and 12 until other business.
Okay. I'll ask, is there any other business anyone wants to bring up that they didn't bring up at the beginning and forgot? And we'll try and keep it short. And we'll go to Councillor Ferrier first, then we'll go to Councillor Bell.
Yeah, I'd like to just before we go on camera, because I know a lot of folks will tune out and it will be short. I just wanted to give condolences to the family, friends, and community of retired Constable Andrea Cooper, who, while a Brantford police officer and not a County of Brant police officer, did a lot of committee work and volunteer for the good of both communities, and did do a lot of work in the county as well. I was lucky enough to know her for many, many years and sit on many committees with her. I'm sure many people on this council have as well. And I just wanted to say that out of respect for her and her family. It's the first available opportunity to do so since her passing.
Okay, appreciate that, Mark. Councillor Bell, you had your hand raised.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. Just a little communication. For those of you that didn't see in the newspaper last week, our medical officer of health tendered her resignation. She is due to leave around about the middle of April. A process of recruiting a replacement is underway. Whether we actually get a replacement in time, I don't know, but we are obliged as a Board of Health to have an acting medical officer of health from the time that she leaves until the time we have a full-time replacement.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Bell. Stressful job too. Councillor Gatward.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Through you to Councillor Bell. Yes, I was disappointed to read in the newspaper that she was leaving, and I certainly hope we can find someone as qualified as she was or is. Is she going to another municipality? Can you tell us?
I'm not at liberty to say where she's going. She's just moving on to another career opportunity, and we are very grateful for her time with us. She's been very effective, very efficient, and we're sad to lose her.
Yeah, thank you. And Councillor DeFerrier, thank you for those kind words. I too knew Constable Andrea Cooper. I dealt with her in various functions, and she lived next door to a relative of mine. She was a wonderful representative of police servicing. Thank you.
Okay. Seeing no other business, nobody's hands raised, that will take us to in camera. Can I get a motion to go in camera? Okay, Councillor Chambers. And second by Councillor Coleman. All in favor?